I, 33, male, have been married to my wife, 30, female, for 5 years, and we don't have any kids, nor do we plan on having any. My wife's sister, my sister-in-law, 28, female, got married 2 years ago to her now husband, 29, male, and is currently 5 months pregnant. About 2 weeks back, my wife and I threw a party to celebrate our 5th wedding anniversary. We made a big deal out of it and invited our families and a lot of our friends. My wife and my sister-in-law have a lot of common friends since they used to be cheerleaders at school, and their squad has stayed friends ever since. 4 out of these 10 women are married now, including my wife, and I've attended all their weddings, so I know these people and their husbands too. So it's my wife and I, Lily and Pat, Maria, Frank, and Susan and Jake, using fake names for the sake of convenience. I'm on good terms with the other 3 husbands as well, since we often do get to meet whenever our wives want to catch up. The only husband who's never bothered to make an effort to join us or build a friendship with us is our sister-in-law's husband, but we're okay with that. Now, out of these couples, only 2 attended our parties since one of my wife's friends, Susan, was sick at the time. Now, at the party, something really crazy happened, which has led to an insane amount of drama since then. I still don't understand why anyone would pull something like that on purpose. Towards the end, I'd taken the karaoke mic to thank everyone for attending and give a little speech that I'd prepared, but my sister-in-law grabbed the mic and made an unnecessary and crass joke. I still don't know what the purpose of that prank was, but I'll say that it definitely has backfired on her. She grabbed the mic and announced to our entire family and friends that the baby she was pregnant with was actually mine, followed by psychotic laughter from her end and pin-drop silence from everyone else. Everyone was shocked to the core, including me, and I had no idea what to say. My sister-in-law just kept laughing like an idiot, and I froze in my place because all eyes were suddenly on me. Before my wife or I could even do anything, my sister-in-law's husband stood up and marched right to where the mic was. He was red in the face, and I could tell that he was about to say much worse things. So I tried to hide the mic, but there was no use since he didn't even reach for the mic and just began talking very loudly. Looking right at my sister-in-law, he told her that he'd slept with her married friends as well, so she had nothing on him. People heard that, and there were a lot of gasps. By then, I'd come back to my senses and was trying to force her husband back to his seat before he said anything even more scandalous, but he refused to budge and continued to speak. He took the names of the women he'd slept with, and unfortunately, they were the 3 married women from my wife and sister-in-law's friends' circle, Lily, Maria, and Susan. 2 of them were attending, and as soon as my sister-in-law's husband confessed that he'd slept with them, things turned ugly immediately. Lily and Pat got into a nasty screaming fight right there, and Frank just left without a word while Maria just sobbed in her seat. I couldn't understand what to do, and neither did my wife know, so she tried to comfort her crying friend, even though now she knew she'd been cheating with her own brother-in-law. Luckily, like I said, the 3rd couple wasn't in attendance that day, so we didn't have to deal with their drama as well. I continued trying to get my sister-in-law's husband out of her face because he was all up in her personal space, pointing a finger at her and calling her all sorts of names while she tried to argue. But she had tears in her eyes and just kept insisting that what she'd said was a joke and she didn't mean anything by it. Eventually, we were able to send everyone home after an hour or so because things had spiraled out of control. Pat had even smashed a glass to the ground in a fit of anger, and that's when we realized that we had to ask everyone to leave for our own peace of mind. Good hosts be damned. We didn't want a lawsuit on our hands in case something went wrong in our own backyard. My in-laws had taken my sister-in-law home with them while her husband headed over to their own house for himself. After they'd left, my wife told me that she'd never expected her friends to turn out to be cheaters. I tried to dismiss it by saying that her brother-in-law might be lying, but she told me that she doubted that, given their reactions. She'd overheard bits and pieces of Pat and Lily's explosive fight and concluded that her husband had probably already been suspicious of her, and this had just confirmed his doubts. He kept saying that he knew it, so it was undeniably true, at least in Lily's case. She definitely slept with my sister-in-law's husband. We weren't sure about whether Maria had or not, but honestly, if she hadn't cheated, then she would have chased after her husband to tell him that and win him back somehow, which she didn't do and instead broke down in her seat. So it doesn't seem likely that my brother-in-law was lying. I was just disgusted that someone would even do something of the sort. Sleeping exclusively with your wife's married friends is literally the trashiest thing I can imagine, and I couldn't believe that this guy had done it not twice but 3 whole times, and with 3 different women. It was like he was trying to break some record or something. A day or 2 after this fiasco, my wife and I received a call from Jake, Susan's husband. She'd been accused of cheating as well, so he was calling us to confirm if that had actually been said. My wife didn't want to say anything, so she handed the phone over to me and I confirmed it for him. I told him that we weren't really sure what had happened, but yes, my sister-in-law's husband had definitely taken Susan's name while listing the women he'd slept with. Jake thanked me and disconnected. I had no idea what was to come, and I was just being honest. A few days back, my sister-in-law called my wife and put her on blast for telling Jake what her husband had said. Apparently, they were already dealing with 2 lawsuits from Pat and Frank, who had decided to sue her husband for having an affair with their wives. We can do that in the state we live in, but that thought hadn't even crossed my mind. And now even Jake had joined them, so my sister-in-law and her husband were facing 3 lawsuits. The reason I'm saying my sister-in-law and her husband as a couple and not just her husband by himself is because despite everything that's been said and done, they've still chosen to stay together. It's beyond me why she would do such a thing. Even being pregnant is not a good enough reason to stay married to this sorry excuse of a man. But I wasn't going to say anything to her about what she should and shouldn't do. If she wants to stay with a cheater, then that's her call and she's free to do as she pleases. She doesn't have the right to tell us what to do, though. So when she was yelling at my wife for telling Jake the truth, I decided to take the phone from her and told my sister-in-law to watch her tone, to which she warned us to watch our backs, because now we'll be the ones paying for their lawyer, since we're the ones who messed up. I don't see any reason as to why we should pay for anything at all, let alone a lawyer. Her husband cheated with her friends. I don't understand how my wife and I are even involved in this except for the part where this all went down at our party. She was blaming us for telling Jake something that her husband had said, but her husband somehow had no fault, even though he's the one who cheated and the one who bragged about it in front of a bunch of our guests. Now, obviously, my wife and I weren't going to pay for a thing. But then yesterday, my in-laws called me up and told me that I owe them this, since I definitely meddled and told Jake what had been said at the party. First of all, I didn't meddle. Jake already knew what had been said, and he was calling us only to confirm it. If I hadn't told him, somebody else might have, and the outcome would have remained the same. Secondly, I don't understand why my wife and I are being dragged into this mess time and again on purpose. We didn't create this mess. And neither did we tell Jake, Pat, or Frank to sue my sister-in-law's husband. I told my in-laws that I owe their daughter nothing, and if they'd raised their youngest even half as well as their eldest, then maybe they wouldn't be asking me to pay for their lawyer today. I hung up after that, and my wife and I just don't want any more trouble. I really don't understand why we're being targeted here by the family, especially when we didn't even do anything except speak the truth. AITA for confirming that what my friend had heard about his wife was true. Update 1. Hello everyone. Thank you so much to the people who took the time to respond to my original post. My wife and I are really grateful for all the support. It's been 3 days since we posted, and we have blocked my sister-in-law and her husband because they keep bothering us. I don't know what they want us to do. We're obviously not paying for the lawyer or whatever else it is that they want the money for. They dug this grave for themselves, and now they have to lie in it. We want no part in this, and I think we've made it sufficiently clear. My wife and her single friends have also unfollowed and removed Lily, Maria, and Susan from all their socials because it's hard to look at them the same way now that everyone knows that they're cheaters. It's just disgusting that they've been cheating on their husbands with their friends, my sister-in-law's husband, and had even successfully hidden it for so long. My sister-in-law is no angel either, since she's the one who started it all with her stupid little prank. I've tried to understand why she'd do such a thing, or why either of them would say the things they said at the party, and have failed to understand their motive behind it. I think they're just attention seekers, and they were doing just that at the party, seeking attention. My sister-in-law and I have never been close, and nor have I been particularly good friends with her husband, so I don't feel sorry for them either. My wife had been kind of upset because she'd had to cut off her sister and several friends after the fiasco at the party, but she knew that it was the right thing to do. I just hope she feels better soon and we don't have to hear from these people again. Update 2. Okay, so I spoke to my father a couple of hours back, and I finally learned a couple of things that have helped me make sense of what happened at our party. My sister-in-law went back to her husband the night of the party itself, even though my in-laws wanted her to stay and file for divorce the next day, because obviously who would want to let their daughter stay married to a serial cheater? But instead, she went back home, and as we all now know, they patched up. It didn't make sense to me back then, but now it all figures. Today, my sister-in-law approached my father-in-law for help to find a good lawyer and to pay for him. But before that, she had to tell him the truth about everything, so she finally confessed that for almost 8 to 10 months after they got married, my sister-in-law and her husband had been in an open marriage. 1 month after their wedding, they realized that they were getting bored, so they decided to open their marriage up, but set some ground rules first. They were allowed to go out with whoever they wanted to, but friends and family of the other individual were off limits. Her husband had stayed true to the latter and tried anything funny with my wife, probably because he knew that she wouldn't fall for it anyway, but he flouted the rule about friends and didn't tell his wife about it. Neither did her friends ever mention it either, and life went on. Then, after 10 months, they decided that they were done fooling around and having fun with other people, and that it was time to get serious about each other. So they stopped hooking up with people outside of their marriage and decided to start trying for a baby, and were successful after a while. A few days before our anniversary party, my sister-in-law found out that her husband had hooked up with Lily behind her back and had broken one of the rules of their open marriage arrangement. Lily had been texting him relentlessly after they slept together and had become almost obsessed with him. She was trying to get him to run away with her and abandon his child and my sister-in-law, which obviously pissed her off. She didn't say anything to Lily, but did confront her husband about it, and they'd been fighting over it even on the day of our anniversary party. She'd seen Lily speaking to her husband at the party, and out of sheer jealousy and spite, she decided to get back at her husband with that stupid prank of hers. Her husband got equally pissed off and then decided to announce which else of his wife's friends he'd slept with, and that's eventually what landed them both in a crapload of trouble. After my father-in-law was done explaining, he apologized to me because my mother-in-law had been asking us to help them pay for a lawyer. Clearly, this wasn't our fault, and they'd brought this onto themselves. All I can say is, this is a seriously messed up situation. I have no idea what kind of stuff they got up to in their personal time, but dragging their married friends into it was seriously low. I'm not judging them for having an open marriage or whatever. In fact, I don't even care about that part. But whatever happened at the party was seriously juvenile and high school crap. I don't know what my sister-in-law even thought was going to happen. And as for her husband, I hardly have anything to say. Bragging about hooking up with your wife's friends just to get back at her? Real classy. Man, this is such a shit show, and I just can't bring myself to believe that my wife is even related to people like these. She was disgusted when I told her everything and told me that she doesn't want to hear about or from them ever again because they're just the epitome of how low people can go. I've only been able to keep in touch with Jake, Susan's husband, since he and I got along better than the others. I'd only been checking up on him and how he's doing occasionally, but today, after speaking to my father-in-law, I decided to call him up to talk to him. After the customary, "How are you doing?" I decided to ask him whose idea it was to go file a lawsuit anyway, and just as I'd expected, it was Pat, Lily's husband. Pat had some idea already that Lily wasn't being completely faithful to him, and that incident at the party was the last straw. He was in no mood to mope and sulk because his wife had been unfaithful and had already made up his mind to get back at both his wife and her affair partner. And within a week, he'd convinced Frank and Jake to do the same. It helped that Pat's brother himself was a lawyer and knew several attorneys who'd be willing to fight for them. I was actually really happy for these guys because they deserved to get whatever they could out of my sister-in-law and her husband. The two of them were insane and selfish and didn't care whose lives they ruined as long as they got their own way. Heck, if my wife hadn't been as understanding as she is, my sister-in-law might have even ruined my marriage with that prank of hers, and God knows how many married guys she's hooked up with, in spite of knowing that they were married. I wouldn't put it past her since that's the kind of people that she and her husband really are. Informal and frankly just repulsive. I can't believe I'd ever open my home to these people when they most definitely don't deserve it. Update 3. Hey, it's been almost a month since our anniversary and things have been going well for us. Not so well for my sister-in-law and her husband since they're being sued for almost $50,000 by the 3 husbands. My in-laws would have abandoned them and let them suffer the consequences of their own actions, but since my sister-in-law is pregnant, they're paying half of the amount for them, but the other $25,000 still has to be arranged for by them. As for my wife's cheating friends, all 3 of them are stuck in an ongoing divorce. I can't say I feel sorry for any of them because they fully deserve what they're going through. I thought that after severing ties with my sister-in-law, my wife and I wouldn't have to hear about her anymore. But a few days ago, my mother-in-law called me while panicking and told me that my sister-in-law and her husband had decided that they couldn't afford to raise a child anymore and were going to give the baby up for adoption once she gave birth. I think it's a good thing because I don't think they're worthy of having kids either, and whatever home the child goes to, it'll still be better than having to live with parents like these. However, my in-laws don't want to lose their grandchild and were quite desperate, so they even offered to pay off the entire $50,000 only if she didn't put the child up for adoption. But I guess she's just not interested anymore. She says she's thought about how it'd feel to be a mother and she's bored already and doesn't think that motherhood is the right choice for her. It's appalling that a human being can be this callous and stupid. But I'm not even surprised at this point. She and her husband are just despicable people and don't deserve to have kids. So I thought it was a good decision for her to give the poor child up. But my mother-in-law ended up asking my wife and me to adopt the child instead so that they could at least be able to keep it within the family itself. I wasn't comfortable with the idea at first, but my wife and I have been thinking about it and it's not a bad idea at all. The only reason my wife and I haven't had kids and didn't plan on having any either in the future was because of the initial few years of our marriage where my wife really wanted to be a mother and I wanted a baby as well. But unfortunately, we learned that both of us were struggling with fertility issues. It caused us a lot of pain at the time, so we decided not to speak or even think of kids after that experience, and that's the way it's been ever since. I won't lie, I have often thought about how different things would have been had we actually had a child of our own, and I used to feel really hollow whenever I'd see my coworkers and friends playing with their kids or hear them talking about their kids' milestones because I'd probably never get to experience that myself. And I guess my wife would feel the same way as well. We've discussed it at length, and we really do think it's not that bad of an idea, since my wife and I still don't think it's too late for us to have the kids and the life that we'd always envisioned for ourselves. I think I'm probably going to say yes and contact the lawyer soon to arrange for the legal paperwork. Update 4. It's been a couple of months since my last update, and I've been very, very busy for the past 8 months or so, because now my wife and I have a little baby boy to take care of. We went through with the adoption, and while my sister-in-law and her husband resisted at first, when she learned that we were the couple willing to adopt her baby, my in-laws were very blunt with her and told her that she'd ruined her own life, but they weren't going to let her ruin her own kid's life as well. It took a bit of convincing, but my in-laws were able to wear them down, and they finally agreed to let us adopt their son a week before the due date. We're done with all the legal formalities now, fortunately, and my wife and I have even switched to working from home so that we can spend as much time as we can with our little bundle of joy. It's really strange, because while my brain knows he's not biologically ours, my heart says that he is. He's the son who was always meant to be mine, and my wife feels the same way. He even looks a lot like my wife, but that's not surprising at all, since he is, after all, her sister's son. So the genes will definitely start showing eventually. And their family definitely has some really strong genes, because even my wife bears an uncanny resemblance to her dad. I'm going off topic now, but I can't help it. I just love my son so damn much. In a way, I'm now really glad that that whole fiasco took place at our anniversary party, because otherwise, I might never have been able to have my son with me. The husbands are all successfully divorced now and have walked away with a crap load of money from both their divorce settlements and also their claim from the lawsuits against my sister-in-law's husband. Good for them. They deserve this. I've only kept in touch with Jake, but I wish nothing but the best for the other 2 guys as well. They've all gone through hell, and I just count myself really lucky that I have a loving and loyal wife, and now a wonderful little baby boy as well. So really, what else does a man need? I'm content with the life I have now, and I truly do feel blessed. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.